Welcome to Journey Through the Gate, your paranormal portal podcast, as we delve into the many questions and wonders brought on by the supernatural experience. What's on the other side of the gate? Let's find out together. Hello, listeners, and tonight I thought it would be interesting to bring someone in that has a different perspective on paranormal investigation and just a lot of interesting things, a little bit about history and a little bit about ghosts and what she's found. Her name is Shelly, and she is the proud owner of the BOYD House. And welcome in, Jill. And what is unique about the BOYD House? What would be the first thing that would pop into your head?
Well, hello, and thanks for having me today. I guess the first thing that would pop into my head is it's kind of creepy. So.
Yeah, we just love that, don't we?
Yeah, it's just a really cool old Victorian home. It was built in 1901. It's got a lot of the natural old woodwork. Two different stairwells. One goes to the kitchen, one goes to the living room. So perhaps they may have had servants back in the day. We got a really cool glass chandelier. It's just got a lot of charm and a lot of really good energy. And we've done a lot of work to the house too, and kind of brought it back to the 1900s and filled it with a bunch of antique furniture, and been doing some wallpapering and that kind of stuff.
Kind of back to life in a lot of ways. I think that's wonderful when people do that and bring it back, restoring rather than remodeling, if you know what I mean, because
right.
Houses like that have so much character. But you started out with an interest in this topic, this broad topic of paranormal, supernatural, uncanny, and just, WTF. And you were a paranormal investigator, and you were traveling all over and doing investigations, correct?
Yeah, I've probably been about, I've always been fascinated since I was a young child with spirits and ghosts and that kind of thing. But then in 2010, I just met a bunch of really cool people that had the same common interest, and we formed a group called St. Croix Paranormal. And like you said, we traveled all over the country to well-known haunted locations. And we've been to the Villiscax Murder House, Thornhaven, the Peoria Asylum, which is unfortunately no longer with us. Waverly Hills, of course, and Villisca, Bobby Mackey's. You name the big popular places, we've probably been there. So that's kind of where I got the idea of, gosh, it would be kind of fun to have my own haunted location to where I can do research myself consistently, and also allowing others to come in and do research as well and see if we can figure out this big puzzle of ghosts and paranormal and who's at the BOYD House and why. So that's kind of where it all kind of came into play.
Fascinating. And I think it's an interesting approach to it, because we've all heard of, famous people like Zach Baggins or whatever buying a haunted house and investigating and things like that. But I think it's even more intriguing when some of, I guess you'd say just us regular people, do something like that and have it try your best to restore it back to its natural vibe. And I think the house, and if there's ghosts there, the house too in some way appreciates that. And you probably have a kinder response than, you know what I mean? And then to have people, I think it's very interesting that you also let other investigators in, and then you can kind of coordinate your data, the things that you heard, and maybe they got a little piece of, something somebody wanted to say or something that happened, and maybe you have another piece, and eventually you start putting it together and you get a bigger picture. I think it's amazing.
Yeah, I think part of it is fun too, because I get to see a lot of what other groups have done. such as recently we had a team in there and they had this music box, which I've never actually seen in use, but I thought was a really cool tool, and now I want one. For those who don't know what it is, it's kind of like a laser beam that'll go across wherever they want it. And they put it at the top of the stairwell. And when something breaks that beam, music on that box will start to play like an old music box. And it looks real old fashioned too. So it looks something cool, like they would want to touch it. And the longer they stay, the more it plays. Well, it kept getting stronger and stronger for them. Every time it kind of went around. And so I will come there afterwards and I will talk to the spirits and say, hey, so-and-so said you guys were touching the music box. So I think that kind of gives us a little bit of a bond too, because they see, and I actually got an EVP of a little boy when I was saying that. And it said they showed her. So that was pretty cool. So that, they know. And I tell them, too, like if I know who's coming, like the next group who's coming, I'm like, hey, guess who's coming? It'd be really great. So that kind of stuff. So I kind of prep them and I don't know. I treat them like human beings. I don't treat them as ghosts and dead. And, I actually have one. She's a really crotchety old lady. I get her voice quite often. I don't know her name yet, but she's pretty crabby about things. And, I was just rambling on one day about, hey, this was my week. How was your week? I'm going to a wedding. Have you been to a wedding? I'm just going on and on and on and on. And I get this EVP where, of course, since I'm talking so much, it gets kind of cut over the voice a little bit. But she was really crabby, like something, I'm trying to sleep. So I thought that was kind of a really, really interesting EVP. So I do ask them a lot too. Do you guys sleep? I mean, we don't know if they sleep. We don't know. So.
Right. And that's the thing. I think, I've been in this for so many years. I mean, you could take off like the first 10 where I was a kid, but I was still seeking answers because I was seeing things and I wanted to know. And it was so hard back then. I mean, you go back 40, 50 years. I mean, it was near impossible. Maybe a couple of books in a library, maybe your school library, maybe you learn more sitting around the table talking to your elders or the older people around them will say, I don't believe in that stuff, but there was this one time, and then you start collecting. So I think it's a different kind of paranormal investigation, but you're investigating, and we all get in this for different reasons. And one of the things I think that intrigues me the most is one, if you're dealing with an actual essence of a human spirit, whatever. And I love how you said I treat them like people, because they're people. Ghosts were people too, or still are. And the different things that they can be in, like the different levels or the different layers, or, you might have the ghost who has no idea they're dead and they think you're haunting them because they see you in their home and they're, what are you doing? They're in their own little vision, almost like a box. It's their perception. And they have no idea. And then, you've got the ones that seem to be able to come and go. And where that is, I don't know. But they seem to be earthbound, but they can still go around for different places. Haunt different things, if that's what you want to call it. And then you have your visitation spirits who have crossed over. And they're still interested in that property, that home. You're there, you're talking about them, you've maybe connected into their energy, and they're like, hey, yeah, that's me, I was here, I was that person that you're talking about in the picture, or yes, this is my home and I come back to visit every once in a while because I'm connected. Now, do you think on those terms or theories?
Yeah, I mean, I especially notice, what's nice about having your own place is that you can get consistent information versus when we go to, say, Waverly, we're just going off of that one time. We're never going to be back, so we can't really get back and connect again. So, learning the history of like the BOYD house, I do have one of the owners was Fred Eckert. And he was one of the founding members, basically, of the town. He had a merchandise store. He was very well respected. He helped build a church. He was just a really big part of the community. And I'm learning more and more about him every day. And we get a lot of myself and other investigators get the name Fred a lot. And we will pick up things that has to do with his store. So we're pretty confident that Fred is there. And I find more information. Like last time I was there, I said, hey, I found out you guys made the best bologna in town. Can I have the recipe? Yeah. So I just, little things I think connect. And I actually have a book too in the house, and it has the history that the town had put together. So it's from 1884 up to like 1984. So there's all these old pictures, and Fred's in there. So I'll pull that out too. And I'm like, hey, you remember this picture? Who's this guy next to you? And just stuff like that. So I try to connect with them that way.
That's such a personal level. That is just, that's the whole point, that this is on such a personal level with the previous owners and previous people who lived in that community, in that home, in that land. And it's wonderful that you can do that and kind of create a rapport with them, and gain their trust, and also let them know that they're not forgotten. I think that's number one with people that have passed, in a lot of ways, other than messages of love and I'm okay, or don't do that, you're headed down the wrong way or something. It's always not forgotten. And I think that's wonderful that you're doing this.
Yeah. But, like I said, it's good that it proves with somebody who is there. But then, like how you're talking about other, different types of spirits too, I think we have a lot that just passerbyers.
Yeah.
Because we'll get a lot of different names that might be the only time I ever get it. And I never, ever hear it again. Either whether it's on the spirit box or just on an EVP. Interesting enough, we kind of call our little logo for the house Railway to the Unknown. And that's partly because the town of BOYD was started by the Minneapolis and St. Louis Railroad. So it didn't come into existence until 1884 when that railroad came through. Now the tracks run pretty much directly behind my house. So there's just a lot of energy with the tracks, I think. And they've had a couple explosions. They've had a death on the track. So just kind of a lot of different energies that come through. It was also right bordered up on the Sioux Dakota reservation line. So who knows what kind of stuff went on back then.
Absolutely. And the fight for territory, everything. Yeah, fight to exist, Absolutely. Because see, that's just the thing. We often think people, the dead, as different than human living beings. And I'm so glad that you think of them not that way, but that they're just an extension on, like we say, and I'm Native American myself, and we say that your journey continues. And I think that's so neat, because you're talking about the railroad. And I've heard a little bit about your story before, and as soon as you said railroad, I went, oh, there it is. Because you did have so many, so much energy going through, so many, like you said, passers-by. But why would it be any different for the dead? You might just have a little extra light in that house, because you are connecting and gathering spirits and people coming together. And they might be drawn to that. You know what I mean? A lot of haunted houses aren't just haunted by things that stay there, but like you said, things that go by and go, what's going on over there? Let me jump into that energy. It's amazing. It's such an amazing subject. It really is.
Yeah, and I kind of feel that too with the more that it has been being investigated by other teams as well as myself. You're like you said, creating more energy in that home. Not necessarily making a portal, but making, like you say, like a beacon, like, hey, you can come talk here. Hey, this house is safe, that kind of thing.
Right. And there's a lot of people that will tell you, as a paranormal investigator, I'm sure you've heard this, where a lot of times people bring their own ghosts with them. So, you often wonder, wouldn't it be great if you could just get a full view of everything that's going on? You wonder, because ghosts do follow people. Ghosts are connected, whether it's somebody you knew or somebody that connected with your energy for whatever reason. And, a lot of times people get an EVP that I'm like, who's Tom? We've never heard, in all the years we've investigated him. Well, you might have brought Tom with you or picked him up at the corner or, it's just so many questions and it's just fascinating. But you said the railroad, like we said, the railroad went right behind there. And that brings so much energy to a town, and so many different people coming in and going. And you said, was it Fred?
Right.
Okay, that he was such a vibrant community participator because he was in the fire department and he did this and he, all the different things he did. Why wouldn't he want to come back and visit? We're hoping he's not stuck. I'm just going to go ahead and assume that he's crossed over and he comes back and visits and he's not stuck there and can't leave is what I'm hoping. Because you are recognizing him and putting him in the forefront and proud of his home, a home that he was probably very proud of. You said this was 1906?
1901 when the house was built, and then he moved in like 1912 and then he lived there till like 1958 until he passed away. I was told he passed away in the home as well.
Yeah. So much of his life spent there. So why wouldn't he want to come back and revel in the fact that yes, all this went on. I mean, it's just wonderful. And do you get any of his? You said you get his name a lot, but what about his family members? Was he married?
Yeah, him and his wife Minnie, but I haven't gotten her name. The woman has never told me her name. I mean, I ask all the time. I want to hear it on an EVP. I hear women's voices on the spirit box, but those could be passerbyers. I kind of feel like whoever is with that crabby voice, because with the EVPs, the voices are always the same. It's either the children, this crabby woman, another woman, and a guy, which I'm pretty sure is Fred. So those are like the 4 common voices that we pick up in the home, as far as the EVPs go.
Wow. Now, you're able to take the EVPs, the information, of course, you've gotten from multiple different tech equipment and things like that. Have you ever seen anything or heard anything with just you? Just what you have? I don't know if you have abilities. I don't know. Intuition, sensitivity. What are we talking about for you?
I can kind of feel like if they're around me, like you get the goosebumps and that energy. So I get that. Sometimes the one main bedroom, if you go by, I see like shadows run really fast out of the corner of my eye. And that's the room I typically sleep in when I stay there. And I have heard my voice whispered into my ear one time in that room. And when,
you mean your name?
Yeah, it was a whisper that said Jill. Oh, and it was a woman's voice just whispered into my ear, and I'd like shot my head up and I was like, who's here? But I didn't see anybody, right. And one of my investigators who slept in there too, he said somebody was rubbing my face and I could hear him like say my name. Wow. So we don't know who that is, but my husband has actually seen a young girl on the stairs. He was just helping, doing stuff around the house. It was late at night. We were getting ready for bed. He was bringing up one last box, and he looked, as he's carrying, he looked up the stairs, and there was a girl standing at the banister, and she just really flashed that fast. He's like, she was wearing a white dress. She had long brown hair. She just looked at me and then vanished. Wow. And he was, yeah. So he's like, and I'm like, oh, great. I've always wanted to see one, and you got to see it first.
Isn't that the way it goes? I know. Now, did you ever look? You said you have that book of the history of the town and everything. Did you ever have him go through and see if she, perhaps a picture of her was there in a family portrait or something?
He's looked at some of them, not all of them, but that's a really good idea. That's a good winter project here in our state of Minnesota.
Too, I mean, just because he does it find a picture there doesn't mean that she didn't live there, or was on the property, or another home close by, or I mean, that's just it. You've got to We tend to tunnel vision a lot of this, and I know I'm talking to somebody who understands that, but just for the listeners, if you got to back up sometimes to get a 40,000-foot view, because the picture is so much bigger. It could be, like you said, somebody's following you, somebody you picked up at another place and brought, and they're just connected and coming in to see how you're doing. Not everybody is stuck. Not everybody needs help. Not everybody wants help. They're fine. Some of them are fine.
Right.
And, but again, just, I don't know why it still gives me chills. You said, when I sleep there, I sleep in this room, and I'm like, oh my God, she sleeps there. But, you get that reaction, because I don't know that I could, but we do it all the time. They're around us all the time. We just don't know it. You know what I mean? I think it would be the setup and the prep. I know I'm going to sleep here. I know there's things going on. And I think that energy kind of feeds it as well, Have you ever left a recorder on while you slept, just in case they wanted to leave you a message, since they seem to be so strong and can communicate at that time, because you're closer, I guess, to their consciousness when we're asleep. I don't know the technical term, but.
Yeah, I usually it depends on the season. If we're running the air conditioners, I don't leave the recorders on all night, because that's all you hear is the air conditioner.
Right.
So it just kind of depends on the season. I usually don't leave one in the room I sleep in, because I'm one of those people that have to have a fan on all the time. Right, so, yeah. But I have left recorders like out in the house all night long, and I've heard footsteps. I've heard laughing. I actually got up one night in the middle of the night to use the bathroom, and our kitchen is more like 1950s style. So it's got like the old farm metal cabinets where everything's just metal.
Right.
And it's just a distinct sound, and you could just hear like somebody banging on it, like opening and closing it. And I'm like, gosh, what kind of ruckus are they doing down there right now? Right. But, to me, I'm just like, well, all right, back to bed. So it's like,
Wow. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to think, a lot of people, like I said, would say I'd never sleep in a place like that. But I've gone down in dark cellars with nothing but, a candle, and you're on a mission. You're there to do something. And I think at those point in times, we carry whatever we're carrying with us that helps us do whatever it is we're doing, and we just feel different. But to sit here and think right now, it's like, just pass out and go to sleep in a haunted house, because you are more aware every click and every, what was that? What's that? Are they trying to say something? It's like we're always on, because we want to know. We want to know, me personally, my main thing is I try to help if I can. I mean, I've met many along the way that were just like, look, I'm fine. I get it. I don't want to go anywhere. This is what and what always bothers me is time. And I think, okay, well, you might be happy here now. Say it's a bar, and it's just someone who likes to be in that energy all the time. And that's where they went, when they were younger, whatever. That's their happy place, I guess. And I had this one kind of, if you want to say it's like a conversation. And I was just like, okay, but remember, time is different. We feel the same in 200 years from now when this is a parking lot or whatever it's going to be. Just don't be stuck. Know that you can go. It's a thought process and understanding. And you got to walk away. It's like free will. It's our choice. But for these that come back and forth, I just find it amazing. It's such a deep subject, and when I heard you talk about Fred on another show, I thought it must be wonderful for him. Like I said, not forgotten, and to have his pictures and people talk about them. And I love it when somebody has a motel and they keep the old pictures up and they talk about, it's just a continuation on, like we're just continuing almost what what they were doing, caring for the home, caring for the land, being respectful for it. But I wonder what happens the other way when somebody tears down something. Do you know what I mean? A beautiful.
Yeah, I've thought that too, or like we have been to the Peoria Asylum, for instance, in Illinois, and that was really haunted. It was an old asylum, so they had a ton of spirits there, like probably thousands, And they tore that down and they put up office buildings, and I often wonder what those spirits think.
Yeah.
Are they, how are they viewing this? Are they viewing it as the office building? Are they viewing it was back in the day? Are these people now in the office building experiencing things? So I always, or like you say, like a house burns down and then it just is an empty field and nobody lives there anymore. It's kind of like, so where do they go?
Right.
What do they do?
And do they move on? Do they stay in the same spot? But I think that goes back to the beginning of this conversation of what's their view? What's their category? I mean, we all try to put things in categories. It's just a normal thing we do in life, And do what are they seeing? Do they see me as a ghost? That fantastic movie. It was hard to watch the first time, but after you got through it the first time and watched it again, you really appreciate it. It was The Others. I don't know if you ever saw that, but that was one of the first movies, I think, that kind of flipped it and gave the view from the ghost's point of view. And they thought that those other people were haunting their home. They couldn't understand what these people were doing in their home. Of course, they had flashes, and they were kind of in their own loop, but the loop created a chain and they moved through the house. And I find that it's so sad in a lot of ways because that's a person. And I wouldn't want to be stuck in a loop, or a box of my own making, my own anger, anchored me there, or just not knowing for whatever reason that you're stuck, whether it be a quick accident or something is anchoring you, whether it's an object or whatever. And that, I think, is the thing that bothers me the most. Like when you said about the asylum, you have an asylum that was meant for, just assuming, some kind of a psychiatric hospital or something along those lines. Now, those poor people are already going through their own torment in life. And it's hard enough to explain to them what's going on in their world while they're living. And then they pass and they're stuck for whatever reason and going through their things. And then now you're trying to communicate with that human being as someone who's dead and trying to explain things that are going on now. It's so heart-wrenching, and you, of course, want to go in there and try to help them understand. And it would be such a difficult thing to do. But I think in a lot of cases, a lot of these homes have the same thing. Someone who was sick or, maybe not mentally stable or angry, caught up in their own anger, worry, grief, whatever it may be. What do you think about that type of thought?
Oh yeah, I agree with that totally. I think it's something that we'll probably never really truly understand until we pass ourselves to get the full, what is the gist of everything in life itself. I myself kind of got into paranormal investigating because I was actually afraid to die. I didn't want to be buried in the ground and it just be black and that's it. I couldn't handle that concept. It just scared me. I couldn't, there had to be another side. I had to know, whatever it took. Yeah. And then I felt like I kind of proved that to myself with some of the, things we got, EVPs and photos and that kind of stuff. So I've changed a lot of my focusing now onto what does go on over there? Yeah. What can you tell me about the other side? So I have gotten a few things from spirits. Now, whether it's true or not, I don't know. Right. But I also think there's a little bit of an unwritten rule that we're not supposed to know, and they don't talk about it. And I've had conversations with priests who have passed away, and they pretty much tell me that they can't tell me. So
isn't that the oddest thing? I get the same thing. Thing. They'll tell you some, My own mother came back and I said, well, tell me, I was trying to speak so fast because I so rarely saw her. And when I finally saw her, where I know she had crossed what I assume and what my own theories have led me to feel comfortable in thinking at this point, that she crossed over and lost all her earthly burdens. She wasn't sick anymore. She looked more like she did when she was younger and happy and glowing and just had her hair done and she was good to go, you know? And I was just so shocked and just wonderful to see her that way, because every time before that I'd seen her very sick as she passed, you know, and she was still looked like she was in a lot of pain. And I was trying to machine gun questions at her, like, tell me, am I doing the right thing? I've got something really big in my life coming up. Is this the right choice? And she said, I can't tell you that. You have to do this on your own, you know, but I'm okay. And I love you. Love is the thing that the number one thing. Be the best you can be. Just try to be a good person. You know, don't let, you know, past regrets, you know, hold you down. Forgive, you know, let all that negative, lower vibrational things go, you know, and try to just be the best you can be, is the message I seem to get most of the time. But the minute you say, well, tell me what it's like. What'd you go through? What did you do? You get a little bit about the past life review type of thing, but I get mostly from those who I can get that much from. It's mostly you judge yourself. Nobody else is judging you. What do you get?
I get stuff more like I asked if you meet other new people on the other side, and they told me you do.
Wow.
So,
yeah.
And I got that because I was listening to a spirit box, and I know it's kind of like my niche thing. That's what I love to do, and I really believe in the spirit box. I just kind of have a knack for picking things up. Like I feel like because I don't see really well, I hear very well. So you know,
Yeah.
So I kind of pick up on that, but I would hear them like sometimes having conversations back and forth with each other. And they sometimes were even talking about like us. And so it kind of made me think, because I heard one time on the spirit box that says, "Hi, my name is Drew." And the other person said, "Nice to meet you." And I thought, well, God, do they meet new people? So, you know, so I brought that up more than once, you know, so it's not, I do it at different locations, and I don't just go with, hey, that one said it, that's the truth.
Right.
And they all said you do meet new people. So I thought that was kind of a cool thing.
It is.
You know,
and isn't it funny we wouldn't think that they would? Isn't it funny that that would be a surprise to us? But it is somehow. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So neat. But I'll tell you something. Right along with it, from my experience, you could be in a room with two spirits talking like that and have four more in there they're not even aware of. Isn't that fascinating?
Oh, yeah, I can believe that. Like you say, they're probably around us a lot more than we know. And, you know, like you say, some people are more susceptible on picking up on that. Other people just go about their daily life like nothing's happening around them. So,
right. And even though we're humans, you know, and we do stuff like that too, it's funny to imagine that it would be that way to them. Interesting sample here. I was on a case with some friends that have much more abilities than I ever would like to have, and and they were kind of keeping what they were getting. We were doing a little experiment, and they were writing down what they were getting instead of saying it. Then went out, everybody talked about what they were getting, and then came back in and continued. So we weren't feeding off of each other, and we finally put together that the man that was let's basically say haunting the place and trying to get the attention and doing the banging and the repeating, and you know, would show up sitting at the same table differently, not like he was doing the same exact thing over and over and over again like a replay, but doing similar things. And what it was the man had passed, and he was stuck, like we talked earlier about being anchored to something, an unjust something that happened that he wanted solved. And his wife had crossed, and she kept coming back to try to get him to listen and to come with her and cross over. And she told us that he could not see her. He would not listen. He would never look up. She tried everything until we started breaking through and explaining to him what had happened and listening to his story little by little. And then he turned and he could see her and left with her. And that had been going on for 30 years, more than 30 years. So it's just, it can be so tragic and so happy and so wonderful at the same time.
Yeah, that's at least that had a great ending, you know? You feel that it took that long to connect, you know? She's probably like, man, come on.
Yeah, but can you imagine the love and the, so things like that make me pause and start unpacking all of the thoughts or theories I had before, because you would think if you're in a room with 5 ghosts, they can all see each other and communicate with each other. But that's not always the case, depending on where they are in their own own spot, I guess, in their own...
Almost like they're on their own different realms and stuff too. Because I've asked that at different places we've gone. I'm like, do you guys all interact with each other? Like, you know who everybody is? And sometimes I get a yes and sometimes I get a no. Right. So I guess it depends on what's going on.
Yeah. It's so interesting. It's like, is it different dimensions? Is it different? Because we all have heard about the in-between. Or I had a friend who was very much into natural beliefs and a little bit of voodoo and a little bit of Wicca and a little bit of Native American, and just, it was all so similar. She wove it together very well. She called it the Unseelie Fae, and she would always talk about, well, they're stuck in the Unseelie Fae, and I said, explain this to me. And she said, well, a lot of religions call it the purgatory, but that has such a punishing connotation to it, like you're going to get stuck in purgatory. But if you think about it and you break it up, it's not really a punishment that was put on you. It's almost like a punishment that you put on yourself, if that makes any sense. And some get in there. It's like they're not coming here, or maybe they, every once in a while, that somehow that crosses over or bleeds into ours, and we can, a little bit, and then maybe goes the other way too. And I've been told it's very much, of course, dimensional, but also levels. I had one come back and tell me, it was in a conversation, more than just myself there, and we were all getting pieces and seeing different things and able to put it together. And she was saying that, well, I can go get him, but he's lower down. And right away you say that and you think, oh my God, is he in hell? Don't go in hell and get him. That's okay. I mean, it's just, that's where your mind would go. And she said, no. It's just different levels. And she said, it all has to do with energy. That if you're encumbered by all these lower vibrational feelings, hate, regret, jealousy, anger, all that, you're vibrating at a lower vibration. Whereas, if you've lifted up and you've let go all of that and you're just all about your, the higher energy and the higher vibrational stuff, you're up here. And I'm like, well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
She said, I'll go down and get him. And I'm like, oh my gosh, don't go there. It's like, it's funny.
What's interesting on that too is I've a couple of times I've asked, what do you guys need to show yourselves? And always they say energy. So that's kind of interesting that you bring that up too.
Right. Well, you think too, as they tell you all the time, well, if that they need energy, of course, draining batteries, we all know that, and the flickering of lights, and possibly a rainstorm, water running by, we all know that. We've heard many a time, whether it be certain rock like quartz and things like that, limestone, all of that makes sense. But if you boil it down, it all has to do with energy, and I think vibration. If something's vibrating on a higher, we all feel better. Think about it. If you're going to feel so much better if a song from like your high school days or something comes on that you used to sing and dance to comes on, and you're dancing in your kitchen barefoot, and you're just having a good old time, just enjoying, your endorphins are raised, and you just feel good, and you feel so much better than when you're sitting in a chair, just gloomy and dark. I mean, it makes perfect sense. So if it holds us down, why wouldn't it hold them down? Makes sense.
Yeah, it totally makes sense.
Yeah, it's amazing. What an amazing subject this is. So tell me more about this wonderful house. Out of all the things, now how long have you been involved with this house?
About a year and a half now.
Okay. So in that time, what was one of the things that either surprised you or just made you sit back and really think about maybe some evidence that you had gotten, and then maybe some evidence that someone else, another team or another person or somebody got, that kind of clicked together and made your piece make more sense? Was there ever anything like that for you?
I wouldn't say anything that like made more sense. Like I think we're getting a lot of the same type of voices for EVPs. We're starting to get more of the same type names. Henry's coming up quite a bit. Um, Unfortunately, it does not have that name anywhere on my deed or anything. So now I got to figure out who this Henry guy is. So because he's come up more than once, and I've already had a medium also say, "Oh, I talked to a gentleman named Henry. Him and his wife are there." So it's like, well, okay, now who are these people? So it's like,
Yeah, and why that place? Like, why, did they live there? Did they live on the land? They could have lived on land before the house was built. Could have been lived next door. And you're just the guys that are paying attention. So like we said earlier, I'll just go over there because there's more good going on over there.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're still kind of learning. I think there's just some memorable things that have happened. I think the first night I stayed there, actually, before I bought the house, I did like a mini investigation, and I came in and I got a couple hits on the REM pod right away and a few things on the spirit box. Nothing super major. So it's like, gosh, should I buy this house? So I hit up a friend of mine that's a really good psychic medium that I trust, and she said that, oh, there's 6 spirits that are there, 2 children, a couple women, and a man, which she's been right on about that when we find that information, or as we've investigated. What I found interesting, though, she said the first night you stay there. So I hadn't purchased this house or made an offer on this house, but she said the first night you stay there. So she already kind of knew I was going to get it.
Wow.
She said, there's a man that gardens, and he comes in the back door, and he's going to let you know he's there. So that first night I stayed there, I'm like, oh, what's he going to do? What am I going to hear? Like nothing was really going on. So I was kind of disappointed. I'm like, well, geez, maybe the house isn't haunted. I don't, maybe I just whatever. And just as I was kind of thinking that, I walked by the basement door, and then I heard a bam, bam, bam on the other side, and the whole door was just shaking like somebody was pounding on the other side. So, of course, I jumped like 10 feet because I was not expecting that.
Right.
But then I tried to debunk that, and there was nothing that did that. There's another door at the bottom of the steps that goes outside, but that had a screen door and that door, and it's very tight, very good seal on that. There was no airflow. Plus, it wasn't just like if you shook the door a little bit, it didn't make that same sound as somebody actually pounding with their fists on the other side. And then what I found really interesting, somebody in town actually came up and told me, and I had never, ever told the story about what the psychic told me about the man gardening.
Right.
And this particular person said, I often see a man gardening in your backyard, and then he kind of disappears into the doors. So it was kind of interesting that she said that, because I'm like, oh my gosh, you know what? So that was a really cool just correlation that we got.
Right. That's amazing. It's amazing. So many, questions pop up in my head, but I think the thing that sticks out the most for me personally is does he know he's dead? Is he just repeating something? Obviously he's aware of you because he let you know he was there.
Right.
Is this something he just chose to do? Like, is that something we get to do? If we cross over and we go through whatever it is we go through, do we just say, you know what? I really enjoyed the heck out of gardening. I'm going to just forego all this other stuff and I'm going to go back and garden, And it could be that simple. it could be that simple. Or some people might just want to go, be on the beach or, whatever. Or like the person I said earlier about, he just wanted to go to the bar. He just wanted to be around the music and and the people. Isn't that neat? And then again, I think, what would happen if the house wasn't there? Would he still be gardening? Would he still see the house? Would he be banging on the door of the the Quick Check or the Wawa or the 7-Eleven that was built there instead? And I think that happens a lot. And you know what it reminds me of? You might find this interesting. Do you remember an old case? Now, I have no idea how old you are, and I'm not asking you your age. But if you were around and watching TV, like a lot of us were, when Sightings was on, or Unsolved Mysteries, when they did their ghost shows.
Oh, yeah. I even watch reruns of that.
Who doesn't? Who doesn't? Because they just don't do them like that anymore. But do you remember the Toys R Us ghost?
It sounds vaguely familiar.
Okay. Well, the story about the Toys R Us ghost was, his name was Yanni. And they had multiple mediums going, some of them famous and some of them not. But they had this Toys R Us store, and all of the toys and things would go crazy, and some of the stuff would come on. Can you imagine? You got all the electronics back in the 70s, the little robot dolls and stuff just going off, and all of the, the hopper balls falling out, bouncing all over the place. But different things would happen, and lights, of course, would go on and off, and they had things in the bathroom, water coming on and off. So they finally started getting investigations. Now, what they found out was this was a ghost who did not know he was dead. He still saw that place as it looked when he was living on it, which was many years before, and it was a farm, and it was by a lake, and he fell in love with the owner's daughter. He was a hired hand. Fell in love with the rich owner's daughter. Of course, she didn't want anything to do with him, and he just had like a mental, let's say, a break where he wasn't getting it. He said, "You don't understand. If you just give me a chance, you're my everything." He would write her love letters. He was deep in love with this girl. She took off and married another, and he was so angry. He was angry cutting wood and accidentally cut his leg. And in such depression and despair about losing this girl, he went into whatever shed he lived in as a caretaker or hired hand, and he got an infection, fever, eventually died of that infection and fever from the cut on his leg. And when he woke up, he's still there. He's, of course, dead, doesn't know it, and had no idea he was in any kind of toy store. He didn't see it as a toy store. As he walked through, his energy and his anger and his fear and despair would just set these things off. He wasn't actually making them go off on purpose. And eventually they talked to him and tried to do their best. It took quite a long time to get him to understand and cross over. But there's one ghost's view of what it looked like to him. He never even saw the toys. It was just his energy alone, and bursts of energy that would make these things go off. How it made the water in the faucet go off, I never figure, but there you go. Water is an element, I guess. I don't know. But isn't that interesting?
Yeah, it is very interesting, because you just never know. Mm-hmm. I always often wonder, like, what if I've asked, like, can you see me? They'll say yeah. So sometimes I test it out, like, what color shirt am I wearing? Right. So, like, and they'll tell me, most of them, unless you're colorblind, then I'm kind of I don't get in it. Right. But so I kind of wondered to myself, okay, if you're from the 1900s and I'm dressed in 2020, how weird do I look to you? It's like, I'm wearing shorts, I'm wearing, and women didn't do that back in the day, right. So it's like, what do you really think of us? And I often wonder, if they're staring out the window, what do they think of these cars going by, or, just life, it's, do they see it? It's kind of like, I kind of want to know these things.
And it's often, I agree 100%. And as you were talking, I was thinking about the music box, the beam thing you were talking about in the beginning, where they stay in the beam, it plays longer. And something they would almost be familiar with back in that time. I think that's very important. If you can if you understand what era you're of person you're dealing with, it can be very helpful to try to bring that forward, like you did, like they did with the music box. And I remember once going on a battlefield, a Civil War battlefield, and when I first started to communicate, it was I said, first of all, I apologize for wearing pants. You know what I'm saying? I apologize for how I'm dressed, because of course those guys would be very put off by something like that. Right away, they have a very a disdain for you, because whatever they would call you at that time, like But yeah, that's huge. I don't know if you ever heard of Mark Nesbitt, but he's fantastic in Gettysburg Ghosts, and written a lot of books. He's very much now into something you might be interested in, and that's paranormal crime scene investigation. Actually trying to solve the crime by using the ghosts and finding new evidence and things like that. It's an absolutely fascinating subject. But
that's really interesting.
It is. It's so interesting. And he had a case where they were trying to get a young soldier to cross over in, I believe it was the Farnsworth, where there were snipers were held up there. That was a good place to be, high ground, in the town of Gettysburg. And it was said that it was possible that this young man may not have shot Jenny Wade, which was the only civilian to die. She was there baking bread not far down the street, by accident. And he thought he had, and he felt so bad about killing a woman, and not that we know he did, but anyway, he thought he did. So they were trying to talk him through this grief, and they went several times, and he finally went with his group and brought in a chaplain, and he said, I have an idea. He said, we're getting responses. He's listening. They dressed in Civil War uniforms, and he came dressed as a chaplain, and forgave him. And, it was an accident. You were a soldier, and explained things. And they got more of a response. And finally, when they said, do you see the light? He turned around and he said, heaven. And he was gone. And the energy changed. So it took them to look like something he recognized for him to get the full attention. And it's amazing what little things make a difference.
Yeah, we've actually done that too on a couple different investigations. We've done a couple churches, so we've actually dressed up as nuns.
Wow.
So, of course, people made fun of us for that, but
wow.
But we had, I think it was like on the spirit box, and I was up by the altar and stuff, and I'm assuming it was a priest, but it was just plain as day on the spirit box. It said, "Are you Catholic?" So that was kind of cool. And we've gone to asylums and dressed as doctors. So
wow.
Yeah, just a lot of it. I just kind of feels like if they, like you said, if they see something. Like I always felt like if I'm walking down the hall with a coat and a stethoscope, they might be like, "Oh, hey, doctor, got to talk to you."
Right.
Yeah. Because they see that, like you said, that kind of thing. It's kind of a comforting, different kind of thing.
In some cases, I think it absolutely could be. I mean, I've known several where it has made a difference. And I believe in a lot of ways, that's some people go to the same spot and maybe not have the same response because of their demeanor, because they're speaking in how we speak now, casually, and not meaning anything. We're not being aggressive. But if you think about how they spoke back in the Civil War or the 1800s, or even back as far as the 40s, that's not very long ago at all. But how we speak now would be so offensive. It would be off-putting. And, some cases you might want to think about, if you're talking to somebody from the 1800s, to just, certain words we use, they're not even going to be familiar with. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, I've done that too, where I'll be talking, I'm like, and that would be like totally awesome or super cool. And I'm like, oh, wait, you probably really don't know what that means. So and then I try to rephrase it. So.
Yeah, that's so funny. It's so funny because we don't think about that, how much language has changed and what's added on and what's dropped off and, our slang and the way we speak. I mean, just as a reference in the Civil War, like in Gettysburg, the day of the battle, when a man and woman went into a store together, not only did they dress to the nines in their best when they were going into town, but they didn't even call each other by their first name. It was Mr. and Mrs. Yes, thank you, Mr. Bradford. Yes, Mrs. Bradford. I mean, they were that. I mean, they ripped each other apart in battleground, but they were extremely, very, almost casual upper class when they were speaking.
Almost like a proper kind of thing. And funny you mentioned this is kind of a funny story.
Okay,
I had the team at the house, and we were having really inappropriate dinner conversation. We were having dinner. We were getting K2 hits while we were having dinner, so we knew something was around. And then it just kind of turned in. We were talking about farting and things like that, just typical stupid stuff, humor. And we got an EVP that we caught later, and it was that crabby old lady, and she said, "You're not very proper, are you?" So that was kind of a really cool EVP to get when because I even said, I go, "You guys, this is really not appropriate dinner conversation." So it's like,
wow. And see, there you go too. It's like, if they can see you, and we're saying if, because, we don't know, but obviously some can. What are they watching? What are they doing? And I have had, been in a situation, was what to do. I want to say there was 4 of us. This one thing we were going on to try to help somebody, and one of them would not talk to a friend of mine because what she did today, I have nothing to do with her. And I'm like, what did you do today? What were you doing? And how did he know? Well, they knew we were coming. How about that? They knew ahead of time before. And I don't know how to explain that. I don't know if it's if they all have that ability. I would assume not. But I think if they have a strong enough energy, and maybe you connect into theirs, like we were thinking about going, we had them on our mind, we were connecting in somehow. But it seemed like a whole day before we even got there, they knew we were coming, and he did not like her. And we still didn't get out of her what she was doing the day before. She goes, nothing. I don't want to talk about it. Like, what did you do that turned off the ghost? You wouldn't have nothing to do with her. You wouldn't answer any of her questions, or she couldn't see him. The 3 of us, were at least getting something, or
yeah,
of whatever we were looking at. But yeah, that was something. And all of her stuff started going wrong. Like her phone went off, and then the drain dead, and everything was happening to her. He was just angry at her for something she had done a whole day before. Crazy. It's just it's a fascinating subject. And what are your hopes for the future for the BOYD house?
Well, I'd like to, continue doing the research and still continuing to have other people come in and do research. And then I'm hoping to branch out and do a little bit more, maybe with the community or maybe some classes. Just so many things that can potentially be done. I'm just touching the tip of the iceberg. So I'm just kind of breaking into what I'm doing now, and would like to continue that, but like to see the growth of the BOYD house just get a little bit bigger, more people coming, just some more interest, so that we can all learn. And then, day 2, we're all, there's so many different things we can do.
Right. There is. And you're handling with an air of respect and care. And I think that's going to make all the difference in this. I know that in some cases, some of these more famous cases, like, the Lizzie Borden house and things like that, the spirits have just had enough. And I think it's because in some ways, maybe past owners or something have let it all go so willy-nilly. And such a tragedy happened there to human beings. And then it's treated like funhouse kind of, in some cases. I don't know about what's going on there now, but I know it has been in the past. And I just think that that's probably not something that they enjoy. being constantly asked the same questions and constantly, people taking pictures on the couch where the guy got his head bashed in. That's just, in some ways, it's very disrespectful. To the
I agree with that. We actually, we went to the Veliscax murder house, and I kind of got that vibe. I'm like, you know what? Everybody comes in here every day and asks, who killed you? How'd you die? And you already know that. Who wants to rehash that? So our team went in there that day, and I said, never once are we going to mention anything about the death or anything. We're not talking about it at all. And we had the most amazing experience in that house. We got so many EVPs. We got EVPs of the kids talking to each other. It was just the craziest of nights that we had ever had. And I think because we never once talked about how you died.
Right. Good for you. Because that one really bothers me. To me, kids went through so much, that whole family, and it's such a mystery. I think the mystery of it all gets us, the guy that was, again, here's another train track, because the train track's not far from there either, is it? It was one of those.
No.
Yeah. And they think that he could have been like, if you think about it, back in the day, gosh, we could do it now. You jump on a train, in one city, and you get off and you do something, jump back on, you're gone. I'm sure that happened a lot. But if that was who did it, we don't know. But that, just to think about the kids and what they went through and the whole ugliness of it. I'm hoping they're not stuck. I'm hoping that they've crossed over and just come back. But I know in certain cases, there's another famous orphanage where the children were tormented in life by this caretaker that was supposed to be helping them. And now that entity, or if you want to call it, I call it an entity just because it's a mean, negative person in death and a mean, negative person, both living and dead. So, and kind of holding them back, kind of role. And I was hoping that the Velisca acts, the house there was not like that. Did you get the feeling that they were stuck?
I kind of think that they are stuck there, but I kind of feel like the mom is trying to keep, like it almost became a circus show for her, and so now I think she gathers them up and tries to keep them away. But if she finds somebody that's like, oh, like, I'm not saying like, hey, she was like, hey, this group's cool, but I think they were allowed to interact with us because we didn't focus on the bad stuff. And what I found interesting, I had gotten a spirit box response saying that one of the little boys' favorite food was bacon. And they'd also, I think they found bacon or something in the house when they died. But we came back like 5 years later, because I think when I left, I said, if you guys told us anything, if I ever come back, I'll bring whatever you asked me for, And so he said bacon. So I brought some bacon with me. And I had put it in, it's kind of like a REM pod, but it's like you attach it to I have an old metal pie plate, and I attach like this alligator clip on it. So it works as a REM pod. So if it gets touched, it's going to alarm like a REM pod. And I put the bacon, I threw it in the kitchen, and I said, hey, I don't know if you remember me, but like 5 years ago, you asked for bacon. So here it is. I brought it for you. And in 10 minutes, that thing was alarming like crazy.
Wow.
So that was pretty cool.
Yeah. And at least you kept your promise. That's one thing too. I really, I guess I get a little annoyed when people are going, well, if you bang on the table, I'll give you candy. And if you do this, and then I'll do, and then they run away and they never try to help them, or, they just, hey, wait a minute. I just used up all my energy to do everything you asked. And now you're just gone, that's
right.
Yeah. That's kind of creepy.
Well, that's the one thing with investigating and how our team has always approached things too. It's a lot about respect. And if you're screaming and yelling, come show yourself. Well, if I was alive, I really don't want to come see you. You're yelling at me. So it's always been about respect. And we've always asked like, hey, if you do this, we'll leave, like if nothing's going on, because they probably just don't want us there. And they'll hit the thing and we're like, all right, thanks, see ya. So we follow through. on what we say, and even with my spirits at the Boyd house, I'm like, hey, if there's anything you need me to do, you want me to bring, if you don't tell me, tell my friends, because they're gonna let me know. And when I hear things from them, again, I go back and say, so and so said this, or we actually had one that said he liked fudge like 2 times, and so my husband actually took the time to make homemade fudge, and we brought it down one day, and we just left it there for the night, so. And it's an offering.
Respectful. It really is, and it's respectful, and it's and it goes back through many cultures. I mean, if you think about it, how people treat their dead, or what is it called? Is it the Day of the Dead or a Day of Remembrance, where people go and they have a picnic on the grave and they talk about the person and they leave an offering. And there's so many different cultures. I know in Voodoo and Wicca they do it too, and Native American, and probably a lot of the funeral things that we do, going to the grave, leaving flowers and to remember, of course, all of that. But to have it cross over in paranormal investigation, I think, is absolutely a positive. I have a friend who's wonderful, KSPS out of Pennsylvania, wonderful paranormal group. And they, very like you, got familiar with a certain house that they often go to visit there, and found out that the ghost loves fresh flowers. So they always bring the lady fresh flowers and put it in a vase and put it by her window, and tell her it's for her. And they always get wonderful EVPs and thank yous, and it's just so nice, and maybe not only should be nicer to the dead, but maybe nicer to the living around us as well. It's a definite positive.
Yes, definitely.
A little kinder to each other. And I love to hear that your group is doing that. I find that over the years we've gone through these bursts, like we talked earlier about, watching sightings and being so excited finally having something ghosts on TV. And now it's all kinds, 24/7, you can find something. But I think it's coming back to the heart of all of it, where paranormal investigators really are putting a lot of heart into it, and they are putting some of the feeling back into it too, not only their own intuition and feelings, but using mediums and psychics and collaborating with people who have sensitivities to get the whole picture. I think it's wonderful.
Oh, I do too. It's got to be a group effort. It's all about teamwork, all about that pair unity, and that's what brings people together. That brings the puzzle together, and it's just got to be there,
Yeah. And I think it's great that we're coming around back to that, because I remember when the first shows, really the constant shows like Ghost Hunters and stuff like that, it was all just tech, and there's nothing wrong with tech, but they didn't want to even talk about their own feelings, like walking in a room, like you said earlier. I walk in, all of a sudden, I feel the electricity, I feel the atmosphere change, the hair goes up. All those there for a reason, our intuitive nature. A rabbit doesn't talk himself out of knowing that there's a predator around or something that it needs, or storm is coming. We have that for a reason, and we absolutely, if you're going to talk about connecting with energies and frequencies and spirits and all of that, we should have all of that turned on, and be kinder. And I think you get more when you're kinder as well. I really think you do, and it sounds like you guys are, and I just wish you all the luck, and this is a wonderful idea. Will you come back on and tell us again what's happening with the Boyd House and what you've done there? It sounds like you just have a wonderful thing going.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. I'd love to talk to you about all the happenings and things that are going on and things that people have found. And like I said, if anybody's interested in checking us out, you can find us on Facebook. Contact us through that way if you want to possibly book an investigation and spend the night. You can also hit us up on our website, stcroixparanormal.com. There's just different ways to get a hold of us. And if you just have questions, want to tell a story, we'd be happy to listen. We're just to help.
Terrific. Absolutely terrific. And I just had a thought when you were talking, and it might be nice to offer your gardener friends some maybe put some seeds out there for him or something like that. If he likes to garden so much, maybe he'll grow you some nice vegetables or flowers or something. Wouldn't that be something else? I just think we're getting in this realm of all the possibilities that could be. I mean, if that's what that man wants to do, here's some seeds. Go garden and have a wish him well little offering.
Yeah, we got there is a little garden back there, but we don't do that, so it's pretty overgrown. And we said next year we're going to take care of that, make it a little better. So he'll probably be happier about that.
I bet. That's probably what he's trying. He's probably mad about the weeds. That's what he's probably trying to tell you.
It probably does, yeah. It's like, lady, get out here and take care of this stuff.
Bless his heart. Oh, my. That's something else. Well, you tell Fred that we send him all the best. And a lot of people out here that are going to hear this and wish him well. And I'm really glad you saved that house. Good for you.
Well, thanks. And it was great being on here with you tonight, too, so I could just talk and let people share some of the experiences and hopefully can reach some people and meet some new people that way.
Absolutely fantastic. And we're definitely going to have you back on again. And, you know, if anybody from your group wants to join you or something like that, it'd just be fantastic. And just thank you so much for being on. It's been an absolute delight. Wonderful conversation.
Yes, thanks for having me. It was great.
Well, thank you, listeners, for journeying through that gate one more time with myself and, of course, our little mascot, Crispy the Ghost, and my wonderful guest, Jill Shelly of the BOYD House. It's wonderful to have a different perspective. You always get little snippets of something different. The fact that she gets to go in and maybe speak to the same group of spirits and of course with the railroad and everybody passers by and, as she says, that pop in and out. It's a great perspective to get because she's finding out little things along the way that just we might not have thought of. Do they sleep? Well, obviously there's one spirit in her house, that crabby old lady that wants to get a little more sleep. And quite a few other things. So thank you so much. I highly recommend going to her website. It's the St. Croix, that's CROIX, paranormal.com. Those links will be in the description. Read up more on the little town of BOYD and the BOYD House. There's investigations on there. There's YouTube videos and things of investigations and information on not just the BOYD House, but other things that the St. Croix Paranormal and Jill Shelly has done. Also in the description in the links, you're going to find a link to my book, We Are All Children in the Wilderness of the Afterlife, a guided tour through a haunted life. And that is the one that I wrote on my experiences some of my experiences throughout my life. And my good buddy, Steve Stockton, jumps in there and gives some of his insight on after each chapter. Also, I've put some really cool new logo, more of a Victorian kind of vintage feel thing in my TeePublic for all the crispy merch you could ever want. The cups, the mugs are great. I really like the pillow. I mean, this one on the pillow looks fantastic, especially if you've already got the one with crispy on it. Halloween's coming up, and I wanted to do that vintage cream and sepia look, just a little bit more. So I did a couple of those. Grab yourself a sticker or something, hand them out. Halloween's coming because it does help this podcast. I'm producing and, everything on my own. I know a lot of people say that, but man, I'm telling you, it takes a minute to get all this and do research and stuff. Also, do not forget on the YouTube channel, and I'm trying to load them up on the Libsyn to go out to all the podcatchers as well. You're going to see the haunted novella that I wrote for Halloween last year. Circumstances and gosh knows, all the different stuff that's happened. Changing jobs and then getting shut down and furloughed and back up. And it's just crazy. Everybody's got a crazy story right now. But maybe this will take you away a little bit. You want a good story that I was really shocked by this. And I honestly, though I wrote it myself, I feel like I didn't. I think the characters wrote it because when I started writing The Strange Case of Cabin 22, even the title, it was supposed to be, Steve kind of challenged me, Steve Stockton, his birthday's Halloween. And he was doing 31 Days of Halloween on his channel, 13 Past Midnight. And I said, I'm going to write you a ghost story. So I sat down and I wrote The Cabin. And it's just about a woman and her 2 sons that rented a cabin. They were going to go fishing, and some things that happened in the cabin that night to her. It was linked to a possible murder mystery, or at least, very least, a death that happened to the previous cabin owner. And all of the people on his channel, there was so much feedback from that. Said, man, this is like characters I'd want to hear more from, and yada, yada, back and forth. So he challenged me. He said, do me a little Halloween story that's got every aspect of Halloween. Full moon, black cat, bats, rats, vampires, mediums, seances, Ouija boards, ghosts, cryptids, everything you can throw in there. And I said, okay. How can I do that it wouldn't be, too crazy and make some sense? So I thought of how many times did we love the Scooby-Doo? They were paranormal investigators in the 60s before we even really were paying attention to what was going on. They really were. They had, the mystery bus and all that stuff. They were going out to solve mysteries, and they bumped into a lot of crazy characters, usually turned out to be the caretaker or the owner of the hotel or the mayor or something like that, trying to stir up some nonsense. But along the way, they met some things they couldn't explain. So I thought, great, Strange Case of Cabin 22. And that's where I thought to put the dog in, who is now Rage. And Rage is not Scooby-Doo, but he's a smart dog. I mean, he's basically based on the character of my dog, Oso, who was a black German Shepherd Chow. And it spun from there. It's based on Dave Weaver taking a vacation again to the cabins in a beautiful mountain in the southern state, Alabama, and how gorgeous the leaves are and everything else. So anyway, the characters kind of wrote their way. I actually sat down and I would spend 6 to 8 hours a day just writing off the top of my head, and then that would be it. Then I would narrate it, and I would record it, and then I would send it to Steve, and he would post it. And it got up to 5 parts, and then life happened. So this year, we thought it'd be neat if I re-recorded, and I'm putting it on my channel with new videos that go with it. Every picture, every video clip, everything I did and created myself. I also tried to keep it to where your imagination would be the guide through this. I didn't want to put pictures of people or too much, because I want your imagination to be your video in your head is going to be better than anything I could put up. But it does have a few things throughout just to enhance your experience. So there's that. So it's parts 1 through 5 are now up on my YouTube channel. That's Journey Through the Gate, Paranormal Portal Podcast, YouTube. Please like, if you can, hit that notification bell, subscribe, share it. Try to get as many people as you can, because this is it. I am finishing writing 6 as we speak. When I get done loading this, I'm going in the room and I'm putting the finishing touches on the last chapter to this story. So if you want to find out what happens to Dave and Rage, you want to find out what happens to the McGees and the wonderful caretakers and Tater Daniels and all the Native Americans that come up and try to help them balance the vibe on that mountain again. What's going on in the Dead Children's Playground? What in the world was that went after Jacob? What's going on there? What's going on in the cabin now that the medium and her young niece, who has a lot of abilities. This story is based on actual events that happened to people that I know or myself, and combined and melted together to create a story that either had an eyewitness account or a personal story, like I said, that a friend of mine told me, and a lot of research on it. It's not just something that's spun out of whimsy, but it does have a lot of whimsy in it. So there's that, and I hope you enjoy it. Please share it. Halloween's coming up, and we're hoping to do a premiere with Steve on chapter 6 and a video that I put together for it, and maybe do a premiere on both channels on 13 Past Midnight myself. If not, I'm going to get Steve live in here so we can premiere it and everybody can listen and just, kick off this Halloween season and fall, and, welcome in a change of season that we all probably could use right now, and just celebrate the supernatural and the wonderful and the mystical and the scariness and the spooky of it all, but also the miracle and the wow of it all. So we're going to try to do that. So subscribe, hit that thumbs up, and hit that bell so you can get a notification. You don't miss this. I'm giving people a little bit of chance to catch up because it is The Cabin is the prequel, then parts 1 through 5. They are all up on my channel. I revamped the recording because I do all the voices myself, and I was in a hurry to try to get it to Steve in time for Halloween last year. So I tried to revamp the video and give you some good quality sound, and I'm doing it all myself. So thank you so much for all the kind comments, and I'm really glad you're enjoying it. Also, don't forget the book is there on Amazon. It is in paperback and Kindle. And I believe it's still, if you get the paperback, you can get a discount on the Kindle to send to a friend for Halloween. It's great reading if you want some good ghost stories and some great commentary from Steve. So there you go. All the links are in the description. And I thank my guest again, Jill Shelly. All of her links will be in the description. So thank you so much, dear listeners, for going through all these changes with us. We appreciate you so, so much. Don't forget, because here we come. Spooky season, everybody. We're getting there. Leaves are changing. So keep your feet under those covers and keep your closet door shut, because there are things that go bump in the night.